A dramatic reunion after years apart. The millionaire freezes when he sees her in the hospital. The hospital corridors smelled of antiseptic and sleepless nights. Overhead lights hummed softly as nurses moved with quiet urgency, their footsteps echoing against polished floors that had seen too much pain and too many miracles. It was just after midnight, the hour when exhaustion settled deep into the bones and even the strongest people felt fragile. Layla Hassan stood at the nurse's station, reviewing patient charts with calm, steady hands. To anyone watching, she looked ordinary, just another nurse in blue scrubs, her dark hair pulled back into a practical bun, her face free of makeup. No jewelry. No signs of status. Just tired eyes and quiet focus. But what no one could see was the weight she carried. 7 years earlier she had lost everything. Her dignity. Her future. And the man who once swore he loved her. Layla, a junior nurse whispered, rushing toward her. Trauma incoming. VIP patient. Private ambulance. They say he collapsed during a charity gala. Layla nodded, already moving. Which bay? She asked. Trauma 3. Severe chest pain. Possible cardiac arrest. Layla didn't react. Emergencies were her world now. Pain didn't shock her anymore, it sharpened her. She pushed through the swinging doors just as the gurney burst in, paramedics shouting vitals over the chaos. Male, early 40s. Sudden collapse. Pulse unstable. Layla moved into position automatically, reaching for gloves, scanning the patient's face. And froze. The world narrowed to a single point. The man on the gurney wasn't just another patient. It was Adrian Cole, billionaire tech mogul, media darling. The man whose face stared out from magazine covers and billboards across the city. The man who had once looked at her like she was his entire world. 7 years ago. Her breath caught in her throat. For a split second, the noise around her vanished. The alarms, the voices, the rushing feet. All she could hear was the echo of a memory she had tried desperately to bury. A restaurant bathroom. Her shaking hands. And Adrian's voice, cold and sharp. People like you don't belong in my world. Layla, a doctor snapped. We need vitals. Training snapped her back into place. She stepped forward, her hands steady even as her heart raced. BP is dropping, she said calmly. We need cardiac monitoring now. No one noticed her reaction. No one knew the history written in the space between her and the man gasping for breath on the bed. Adrian Cole was dying. And Layla Hassan was about to save him. 7 years earlier, Layla hadn't been a nurse. She had been a law student with dreams bigger than her circumstances. She worked nights at a luxury hotel to pay tuition, wearing borrowed heels and a practiced smile as she served people who never looked at her twice. That was where she met Adrian. He had noticed her immediately. Not the uniform. Not her background. He came back night after night, asking for her section, staying long after his coffee grew cold. He asked about her dreams, her studies, her life. And for the first time, someone powerful didn't treat her like she was invisible. Their relationship grew quietly at first. Hidden dinners, late-night walks, stolen moments between her shifts and his meetings. Adrian told her he admired her strength, her intelligence, her resilience. He promised her the world. But promises mean little when fear enters the room. The night Adrian's mother discovered their relationship, everything changed. Layla remembered standing in Adrian's penthouse living room, her hands folded tightly in front of her, while his mother's eyes scanned her like an unwanted stain. Your staff? The woman asked coolly. No, Layla replied softly. I'm studying law. Pause. Then the smile, tight, polite, cruel. Adrian, this is a phase, his mother said. You're risking everything for someone who doesn't understand your world. Later that night, Adrian didn't defend Layla. He hesitated. And that hesitation destroyed her. The next morning, security escorted Layla out of the building as if she were a criminal. Adrian didn't answer her calls. Didn't reply to her messages. By evening, her access card stopped working. By morning, her name had been erased from his life. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence. Layla learned quickly that heartbreak didn't care about fairness. She dropped out of law school, drowning in debt and shame. The world had taught her a brutal lesson. Love was conditional and respect was reserved for those with power. So she rebuilt herself. Slowly. Quietly. Without asking anyone for permission. She enrolled in nursing school. Worked double shifts. Slept 4 hours a night. Cried in bathroom stalls and kept going anyway. 7 years later, she stood in a hospital trauma bay, stronger than she had ever been. And fate had placed Adrian Cole on her stretcher. Clear, the doctor shouted. Layla stepped back as the defibrillator jolted Adrian's body. His chest rose violently, then stilled. Monitor screamed. Again? Layla moved without hesitation, adjusting 4 lines, calling out numbers, doing everything she could to keep him alive. This man had once broken her. Now his life depended on her hands. Finally, the monitor steadied. A heartbeat. Weak but present. A collective breath released around the room. He's stabilizing, the doctor said. Prep him for ICU. As they wheeled Adrian away, his eyes fluttered open briefly. Confused. Glassy. And then recognition. His gaze locked onto Layla's face. She knew that look. Disbelief. Fear. His lips moved. He whispered her name. Layla. Her expression didn't change. She didn't respond. She simply turned and continued her work, her professionalism unshaken, even as something deep inside her trembled. Hours later, the ICU was quiet. Machines beeped steadily. The city slept outside the windows, unaware that 2 lives had collided again after years of silence. Layla stood outside Adrian's room, staring through the glass. He looked smaller now. Fragile. Vulnerable. Not the untouchable millionaire the world admired. Just a man with a failing heart. A young doctor approached her. You know him? He asked casually. Layla hesitated. Yes, she said finally. I do. You're calm, he said. Most people would be shaken treating someone that famous. Layla gave a faint smile. Fame doesn't make someone more human, she replied. It just hides their flaws better. The doctor nodded, unaware of how deep those words cut. Layla turned to leave when a nurse stopped her. He's asking for you, the nurse whispered. He won't settle down. Keeps asking if you're real. Layla closed her eyes briefly. 7 years ago, she had begged for answers. Tonight, Adrian Cole would beg for hers. She stepped into the room. Adrian's eyes widened when he saw her. You're here, he said hoarsely. I thought I was imagining things. You're not, Layla replied evenly. You're in Metropolitan General Hospital. You suffered a cardiac event. He swallowed hard. And you? He asked. Why are you here? She met his gaze, unflinching. I work here. Silence filled the room. Adrian stared at her uniform, her badge, her calm authority. The woman he once dismissed as temporary now stood between him and death. I didn't know, he whispered. Layla tilted her head slightly. No, she said softly. You never bothered to find out. His breath hitched. And for the first time in his life, Adrian Cole didn't know what to say. He thought she was still nothing, until the hospital turned against her and the millionaire had to watch. Adrian Cole didn't sleep. Even sedated, even exhausted, his mind kept pulling him back to one impossible truth. Layla Hassan was real, and she was standing right in front of him. Not in a hotel uniform. Not behind a serving tray. But in scrubs, with a badge that said RN, moving through the ICU like she belonged there, like she owned the space with competence alone. He watched her from the bed with a kind of stunned stillness. The world knew Adrian as fearless. A man who negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, a man who could silence a room just by walking into it. But in this hospital, his body had betrayed him. And Layla's presence did something worse. It reminded him of the one moment in his life he had tried to erase, the decision that had made him a coward. He swallowed hard and rasped, Layla, please? Layla didn't move closer. She didn't soften. She didn't even flinch. She adjusted a monitor reading with clinical detachment and said, You need rest. Your heart is unstable. Stress could trigger another episode. Adrian's eyes glistened, anger and regret mixing together like poison. I don't care about the stress, he said. I care about why you're here. Why you're standing in front of me like I'm a stranger. Layla finally looked at him fully. Her eyes were steady, but there was something locked behind them, a door that had been bolted shut for 7 years. You are a patient, she said. And I am your nurse. That's all you need to understand right now. She turned to leave. Adrian's voice cracked. I destroyed you. Layla stopped for just a second. Then, without turning around, she answered quietly, No. You revealed who you were. I destroyed the version of myself that thought you were safe. And she walked out. Adrian stared at the empty doorway as if the air had been ripped from his lungs. That was the moment he realized something terrifying. Layla didn't need him anymore. And the world he once used to control her, money, influence, status, meant nothing inside these walls. Or so he thought. The next morning, the hospital turned into a stage. Not because of Layla. Because of Adrian Cole. The news broke fast. Billionaire tech titan hospitalized after collapse. By noon, the lobby swarmed with cameras, security, and reporters hungry for drama. Hospital administration was suddenly tense, nervous, overly polite. A VIP was here. And VIPs came with pressure. Layla avoided the lobby, kept her head down, focused on her rounds. She thought professionalism would shield her. She was wrong. Because the moment people found out she was Adrian's assigned nurse, the whispers started. A nurse named Candace, blonde, polished, the type who treated the hospital like a social ladder, cornered Layla near the supply room. "I didn't know you had connections," Candace said with a tight smile. Layla didn't engage. "Move, please." Candace laughed softly. "Oh, don't be like that. Everyone's talking. Adrian Cole personally requested you." "How does that even happen?" Layla's jaw tensed. "I didn't request anything." Candace's eyes narrowed, curiosity turning to something uglier. "Come on, Layla," she said. "People like you don't just get assigned to men like that. Unless." Layla looked her dead in the face. "Unless what?" Candace leaned in slightly, voice dripping with insinuation. "Unless you've got a history." Layla's hands curled around the chart in her grip, knuckles whitening. But she refused to give Candace the reaction she wanted. "I'm working," Layla said calmly. "If you're bored, find a patient who needs help." Candace's smile vanished. "Fine," she snapped. "But don't act like the hospital doesn't notice. VIP cases come with standards. And some of us actually look the part." Layla walked away without responding, but the words followed her like a shadow. Some of us actually look the part. By late afternoon, Layla was called to the administrative wing. That alone made her stomach tighten. Nurses weren't usually summoned there unless something had gone wrong. She entered a sleek office and found 3 people waiting: the head nurse supervisor, a hospital administrator, and a woman Layla had never seen before. Sharp suit, perfect hair, cold eyes. The administrator stood. "Layla, thank you for coming." Layla's instinct screamed. "Yes," she replied carefully. The suited woman spoke before anyone else could. "I'm Marlene Cole," she said, voice smooth as glass. "Adrian's mother." Layla felt her chest tighten. It was her. The same woman whose gaze had once stripped Layla of dignity with a single look. 7 years later, Marlene Cole looked exactly the same. Untouched by time, untouched by consequences. Marlene's eyes traveled over Layla's uniform and landed on her badge. She smiled faintly like she was amused. "So," Marlene said, "you ended up here." Layla's voice was steady, but inside she felt the old humiliation clawing up her throat. "I'm here because I work here," she replied. "If this meeting is about my patient's care." "It is," Marlene cut in. "And I'm not comfortable with you being involved." The supervisor shifted awkwardly. The administrator cleared his throat. Layla stared, refusing to blink. "I'm Adrian's assigned nurse. My performance record is clean." Marlene's smile sharpened. "This is not about your record," she said. "This is about what you represent. Adrian is vulnerable. And vulnerable men make emotional decisions." Layla's pulse thudded. "What are you implying?" she asked. Marlene leaned back slightly like she was bored. "I'm implying that my son does not need distractions," she said. "And if you care about your career, you'll voluntarily step aside." Layla glanced at the administrator. "Is that what the hospital is asking?" The administrator avoided her eyes. "We're just trying to avoid complications," he said carefully. "The family requested a different nurse. VIP cases are sensitive." Layla's stomach dropped, not because she feared losing the case, but because she recognized what this was. Power. The same power that had ripped her life apart before. But this time Layla didn't break. She breathed in slowly. "I'm not a distraction," she said. "I'm a medical professional. If you want reassignment, follow protocol. But I will not be bullied out of my job." Marlene's eyes hardened. "You always were stubborn," she murmured like it was a flaw. Layla stood taller. "And you always were cruel," she answered quietly. The room went dead silent. The supervisor looked horrified. The administrator's eyes widened. Marlene's lips pressed together slowly, as if she couldn't believe a woman like Layla would speak back. Then Marlene smiled again, but this smile was different. This one was a warning. "Adrian doesn't remember things clearly," she said softly. "But I do. And I will not allow you to circle back into his life." Layla's voice didn't shake. "This isn't your hotel lobby. This is a hospital. And your son is a patient. You do not control me here." Marlene stood, her heels clicking like a threat. "We'll see," she said simply. And she walked out. When Layla returned to the ICU, she found Candace standing outside Adrian's room, talking to a private security guard. Candace glanced at Layla and smirked. "Oh," she said loudly, "she's here?" Layla's stomach tightened. The guard stepped forward. "Nurse Hassan." "Yes." "Administration says you're removed from this case," the guard said. Layla stared. "Removed? On what grounds?" Candace shrugged, delighted. "VIP case," she said. "Family request. Happens all the time. Don't take it personally." Layla's hands trembled slightly, only slightly, but she kept her voice calm. "I want written documentation," she said. "And I want my supervisor present." Candace rolled her eyes. "You're acting like you're important." Layla looked at her, voice low. "I am important to my patients," she said. "That's enough." Then the door to Adrian's room opened. And Adrian himself, pale, bruised but awake, sat upright in bed. His eyes locked on Layla, then moved to the guard. "What's happening?" Adrian rasped. The guard hesitated. "Sir, your mother requested." "No," Adrian said sharply, voice stronger than it should have been. "Say it clearly." The guard swallowed. "They're removing Nurse Hassan from your care." A heavy silence filled the corridor. Adrian stared at Layla. She didn't plead. Didn't ask him to intervene. She simply stood there, expression unreadable, as if she'd already accepted the injustice. That look hit Adrian like a punch to the chest. It was the same look she had worn 7 years ago when he failed her. And now history was repeating itself. He felt something inside him crack. He looked at Candace. "Who are you?" Candace blinked. "I'm Nurse Candace. I'll be taking over your care." "No," Adrian said. Candace's smile faltered. "Excuse me?" Adrian's eyes went ice cold. "I said no," he repeated. "Layla stays." Candace looked toward the guard. "He's confused. He's post-op." Adrian's voice rose. "I'm not confused." He turned his gaze to Layla, and for the first time his tone softened. "I asked for her," he said quietly. "I trust her." Layla's expression didn't change, but her throat tightened. Marlene Cole appeared at the end of the hall, walking fast, face tight with controlled fury. "Adrian," she said sharply, "you're not thinking clearly." Adrian's eyes locked onto his mother. "No," he said, voice firm. "For the first time in a long time. I am." Marlene's eyes flicked to Layla like a blade. "You," she hissed. "What did you do?" Layla didn't respond. Adrian answered for her. "She did her job," he said. "Something you've never understood." Marlene stiffened. "Adrian, this is inappropriate." Adrian's voice dropped, deadly calm. "What's inappropriate," he said, "is you trying to control my life while I'm lying here nearly dead." Candace shifted, uncomfortable. Marlene forced a smile. "I'm protecting you." Adrian stared at her. "You're protecting your pride," he said. "Not me." Marlene's eyes flashed. "You don't owe that woman anything." Adrian's hands tightened on the blanket. "I owe her my life," he said. "She saved me." Marlene scoffed. "That's her job." Adrian's gaze sharpened. "And respect is yours," he said, "yet you've never earned it." The corridor went silent again. Doctors passing by slowed. Nurses glanced over. A billionaire was arguing with his mother in an ICU hallway, defending the nurse everyone treated like she didn't matter. Marlene's face turned pale, then red. "You will regret humiliating me," she whispered. Adrian didn't blink. "No," he said. "You will regret making me choose." Later that night, Layla entered Adrian's room to check vitals. He watched her quietly, eyes full of something heavy. "I didn't ask you to fight," Layla said without looking up. "You should be resting." Adrian's voice was rough. "I fought because I recognized the pattern." Layla paused, hand on the monitor. "What pattern?" she asked. Adrian swallowed. "The one where you're treated like you're disposable," he said. "And everyone expects you to accept it." Layla's jaw tightened. "You don't get to notice now," she said softly. "Not after 7 years." Adrian's eyes glistened. "I know," he whispered. "That's why it hurts." Layla turned to leave. Adrian's voice stopped her again. "Layla," he said quietly, "tell me what they did to you back then." Layla's hand tightened on the door frame. She didn't answer immediately. Then she said, almost like a confession to the air, "They took my future." She looked back at him, eyes shining but controlled. "And I built a new one without you." Adrian's throat bobbed. "Are you happy?" he asked. Layla held his gaze. "I'm proud," she said. Then she walked out. But Adrian sat there, trembling, not from illness, but from the realization that Layla had become something he couldn't control, couldn't dismiss, couldn't silence. And for the first time in his life, Adrian Cole understood fear. Not fear of losing money. Fear of losing the one person he had wronged, forever. The truth comes out, and the millionaire learns the price of silence. The hospital didn't forget what happened in that hallway. By morning, whispers followed Layla everywhere she walked. Some nurses looked at her differently now, curious, cautious, even respectful. Others looked away, uncomfortable, as if her presence reminded them that the system they trusted wasn't always fair. Layla noticed everything. She always had. But she didn't change her pace, didn't lift her chin higher or soften her expression. Respect gained through drama never lasted. Respect earned through consistency did. Inside the ICU, Adrian lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His chest ached, but not in the way the doctors warned him about. This pain was older, deeper. It came from memories he had buried under success, money, and denial. For years, he had told himself that Layla was strong enough to survive without him. That she would understand. That silence was kinder than conflict. Now he knew the truth. Silence had destroyed her. And watching her stand in that hallway, calm, dignified, refusing to beg, had stripped away every excuse he had ever made for himself. He pressed the call button. When Layla entered, he saw the flicker of guarded professionalism return instantly. "Yes?" she asked. "I want to tell you something," Adrian said. Layla checked the monitor. "If this is emotional stress, it can wait." "No," Adrian said quietly. "This can't." Layla hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. Adrian took a slow breath. "The night my mother confronted you. I heard everything." Layla's fingers paused. "You heard?" she repeated. "Yes," he said. "I stood outside the room like a coward and listened while she dismantled you." Layla's lips pressed together. "And you still chose silence," she said. Adrian closed his eyes. "I told myself I was protecting you. That if I confronted her, she would destroy you publicly. I thought disappearing was mercy." Layla's voice sharpened. "No. Disappearing was convenience." He flinched. "You let me think I wasn't worth fighting for," she continued. "You let me believe I imagined the love. That's not mercy, Adrian. That's cruelty dressed up as fear." The room felt smaller. "I know," he whispered. "And I hate myself for it." Layla exhaled slowly. "Hating yourself doesn't heal what you broke." Adrian's voice trembled. "Then tell me how." Layla met his eyes fully now. "You don't get to fix the past," she said. "You only get to be accountable in the present." Adrian nodded. "Then let me start there." That afternoon, Marlene Cole arrived again. But this time she wasn't alone. She brought lawyers. And money. Lots of it. Layla was charting when her supervisor appeared, face tight. "Layla," she said quietly, "administration wants to see you again." Layla felt the warning bells immediately. In the conference room, Marlene sat at the head of the table, perfectly composed. Her lawyers flanked her like armor. Marlene smiled when Layla entered. "You're causing quite a disruption," she said. Layla didn't sit. "You tried to remove me from my job," Layla replied. "If this is retaliation, I'd like HR present." Marlene laughed softly. "You always were dramatic." One lawyer slid a folder across the table. "This is a settlement offer," he said. Layla looked at it but didn't touch it. "For what?" she asked. Marlene folded her hands. "For your cooperation." Layla's heart pounded, but her face stayed calm. "Be specific." Marlene leaned forward. "You will resign quietly," she said. "Sign a non-disclosure agreement. And you will walk away with enough money to never worry again." The words hung in the air like poison. Layla stared at her. "You're trying to buy my silence," she said. Marlene smiled. "I'm offering you security." Layla shook her head slowly. "You offered me security once before," she said. "Right before you took everything." One of the lawyers interjected. "Ms. Hassan, this is a generous offer. Refusing it would be unwise." Layla finally picked up the folder. She flipped through the pages. The number made her stomach twist. It was more money than she had ever seen. Money that could erase debt, buy comfort, make life easy. And still, she closed the folder and slid it back. "No," she said. Marlene's smile vanished. "You're making a mistake." Layla's voice was steady. "I already survived the worst thing you could do to me. You don't scare me anymore." Marlene stood abruptly. "You think the hospital will protect you? You think people like you win these fights?" Layla met her gaze. "I don't need to win," she said. "I just need to not lie." Marlene's eyes hardened. Then you'll lose everything. Layla didn't blink. I already rebuilt everything, she said. You can't take it twice. That night, Adrian learned about the meeting, and something inside him finally snapped. He demanded to see his mother. When Marlene entered his room, she was smiling, until she saw his expression. You embarrassed me, Adrian said coldly. I protected you, she replied. No, he said. You tried to erase her again. Marlene scoffed. She's manipulating you. Adrian laughed once, bitterly. She turned down your money. Marlene froze. What? She said. She refused your settlement, Adrian continued. Do you know why? Marlene said nothing. Because she has integrity, Adrian said. Something you tried to teach me, but never practiced. Marlene's voice sharpened. She doesn't belong in your world. Adrian sat upright, pain flaring but ignored. She belongs wherever she earns her place, he said. And she earned it long before I did. Marlene's face flushed. You're choosing her over your family? Adrian's voice was quiet, lethal. I'm choosing accountability over cowardice. He reached for the phone beside his bed. What are you doing? Marlene asked sharply. Adrian didn't look at her. I'm calling the hospital board, he said. And my lawyers. And the press. Marlene's eyes widened. You wouldn't. Adrian finally looked at her. I disappeared once to avoid conflict, he said. I won't do it again. The next morning, the hospital was in chaos. News broke fast. Billionaire accuses own family of workplace discrimination. Administrators panicked. Lawyers flooded in. HR launched an internal investigation. Layla found out when a reporter cornered her outside the staff entrance. Ms. Hassan, the reporter said, microphone raised, is it true Adrian Cole intervened after his mother tried to remove you from your position? Layla stepped back. I'm a nurse, she said calmly. I don't comment on private matters. But the damage was already done. The hospital couldn't ignore it anymore. By noon, Layla was called in, not to be punished. To be apologized to. The administrator looked pale. We failed you, he admitted. Your reassignment request was denied improperly. You will retain your position and disciplinary action is underway. Layla listened without satisfaction. Thank you, she said simply. When she left the office, she found Adrian waiting in a wheelchair, looking exhausted but determined. He looked up at her. I didn't do this to fix us, he said. I did it because it was right. Layla studied him for a long moment. Doing the right thing doesn't erase the past, she said. I know, he replied. But it changes who we are now. Layla nodded slowly. That, she said, is the first honest thing you've said. Adrian smiled sadly. I'm learning. That evening, Layla sat alone in the break room, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. She had stood up to power. And for the first time, power had blinked. She realized something profound in that quiet moment. Justice didn't always come with applause. Sometimes it came with a choice. And this time, she had chosen herself. When the past tried to break her again, she stood tall, and the world finally saw her worth. The storm didn't pass quietly. If anything, it grew louder. By the end of the week, Layla's name was everywhere, though not the way she would have chosen. News panels debated her situation like it was a thought experiment. Comment sections split into cruel halves. Some praised her integrity, others questioned her motives. She must want money. She's riding his fame. Women like that always come back. Layla didn't read the comments. She had learned long ago that survival required discipline, about what to take in and what to shut out. Still, the weight pressed on her. Every shift felt heavier. Every hallway glance lingered longer. Some staff treated her with new respect. Others treated her like she had broken an unspoken rule, know your place. But Layla had stopped living by other people's definitions of place. Adrian was recovering faster than expected, though doctors warned stress could undo everything. He listened but only partially. Because something else demanded his attention now. Responsibility. One afternoon, as Layla checked his vitals, he said quietly, I made a decision. Layla didn't look up. You should be resting. I am, he replied. From running. She met his eyes. I'm stepping back from my company, Adrian said. Publicly. Layla stilled. Why? Because power without accountability is just another form of harm, he said. And I've done enough of that. Layla studied him, searching for performance, for ego. She found none. That's your choice, she said finally. Yes, Adrian replied. For once. Marlene Cole didn't take the news well. She called emergency meetings. issued statements, tried to regain control of a narrative that had slipped through her fingers. Then she did what powerful people often do when they lose control. She retaliated quietly. A complaint appeared in Layla's file. Anonymous, vague, carefully worded, unprofessional behavior, emotional involvement with a patient, conflict of interest. Layla was called into HR once more. This time she wasn't afraid. She laid out everything. Timelines, assignments, witnesses, documentation, years of spotless evaluations. When the investigator finished reviewing, she looked up at Layla with something close to admiration. "You handled this with remarkable restraint," she said. Layla nodded. "Because my job matters to me. And it shows," the investigator replied. 2 days later, the complaint was dismissed. Not quietly. Formally. With consequences. Marlene Cole's influence over the hospital was officially severed. For the first time in her life, Layla watched power face a boundary it could not cross. That night, Adrian insisted on walking, slowly, carefully, to the hospital garden. Layla accompanied him not as his nurse but as a witness. The city lights flickered beyond the trees. The air was cool and clean. "I used to think money could solve anything," Adrian said. "Silence people. Protect reputation. Buy comfort." Layla folded her arms. And now I know money just delays consequences," he said. "It doesn't erase them." They stopped near a bench. "I don't expect forgiveness," Adrian continued. "I don't even expect trust. But I want you to know something." Layla waited. "I will never allow anyone to treat you the way I did again," he said. "Including myself." Layla's voice was quiet but firm. "That promise isn't for me." Adrian nodded. "I know. It's for who I choose to become." They stood there in silence. Not romantic. Not healed. But honest. And honesty was heavier and rarer than love. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. Marlene appeared in the hospital lobby unannounced, her expression rigid with controlled fury. Cameras weren't there this time. No audience. No leverage. Just truth. She intercepted Layla near the elevators. "You think you've won?" Marlene said quietly. Layla didn't stop walking. "I never competed with you." Marlene followed. "You humiliated me." Layla turned then. "No," she said calmly. "You humiliated yourself by underestimating someone you thought was disposable." Marlene's jaw tightened. "You took my son from me." Layla shook her head. "You never had him. You only controlled him." Marlene's voice trembled for the first time. "You don't belong among people like us." Layla stepped closer, not threatening, not angry. "People like you," she said softly, "are afraid of people like me because we survive without permission." Marlene stared at her. And for the first time had no response. Layla pressed the elevator button and stepped inside. She didn't look back. Adrian was discharged the following week. The press waited outside. Questions flew. Cameras flashed. Adrian stopped at the doors and turned back toward the building. Layla stood just inside, watching from a distance. Their eyes met. Adrian nodded, not as a savior, not as a hero, but as a man acknowledging a woman who had changed him. Layla nodded back. Then she turned and walked back to her station. Because her story didn't end at the hospital doors. It continued, with her. The millionaire stood before the world, and finally faced the woman he once failed. The world expected a fairy tale ending. A reunion. A public apology. A powerful man kneeling before the woman he once discarded. That wasn't what happened. Because Layla Hassan didn't need a spectacle. She needed truth. And accountability. And time. Life at the hospital slowly returned to normal, at least on the surface. Layla went back to 12-hour shifts, difficult patients, aching feet, and quiet victories that never made headlines. The gossip faded. New crises replaced old ones. Attention moved on as it always did. But something fundamental had shifted. People listened to her now. Not because of Adrian Cole. But because she had shown what it looked like to stand firm without shouting, to refuse money without bitterness, to hold dignity when every system encouraged surrender. Junior nurses sought her guidance. Doctors trusted her judgment. Supervisors stopped overlooking her. Respect had arrived, not as a favor but as a consequence. Adrian watched all of this from a distance. He didn't call. Didn't appear uninvited. Didn't try to rewrite the narrative. For the first time in his life, he understood that presence without entitlement was a form of respect. He stepped down publicly as CEO, transferring control to an independent board. He testified openly about abuse of influence, about silence as complicity, about how power rots when unchecked. Some called him brave. Others called it performative. He didn't care. Because this time the truth wasn't about image. It was about repair. Months later, Adrian returned to the hospital, not as a patient. He arrived quietly without security, wearing no symbols of wealth. Just a simple coat, tired eyes, and something unfamiliar in his posture. Humility. Layla saw him from across the lobby. Their eyes met. No rush. No tension. Just recognition. He approached slowly. "Hello, Layla," he said. "Adrian," she replied. He swallowed. "May I walk with you?" She considered him for a moment. Then nodded. "You may." They walked through the corridor side by side. Not close. Not distant. Balanced. "I won't take much of your time," Adrian said. "I just wanted to tell you something, without cameras. Without pressure." Layla waited. "I used to believe love meant protection through control," he said. "I was wrong. Love means standing still long enough to face the damage you've done." Layla stopped walking. She looked at him, not with anger, not with longing. With clarity. "You don't owe me redemption," she said. "You owe yourself honesty." Adrian nodded. "I'm learning." Layla exhaled softly. "And I'm no longer waiting," she said. Adrian smiled, not in pain, not in hope. In understanding. "That," he said, "is exactly as it should be." They parted without promises. Without regret. Without unfinished sentences. Layla returned to her ward, where a patient needed reassurance, where a family waited for answers, where her presence mattered in ways no headline ever could. Adrian walked out into the city, not restored, not forgiven, but accountable. And changed. That night, Layla stood by the window of the break room, watching the lights of the city pulse like a living thing. She thought of the girl she once was, the one who believed love required shrinking herself, the one who mistook silence for safety. She smiled. That girl had survived. But this woman? This woman had chosen herself. And no one, not wealth, not status, not cruelty, would ever take that from her again.